Hello, everyone, and we are live yet again. This is one of my authors' chats of the week, and I'm excited to be here. I'll keep, my eyes open for the notifications to go out so my co-host can join me, and we'll go from there. But hope everybody's week's been going well. I know we're heading into the holiday season, and this is when everything seems to pick up speed and get a little hairy-carry out there. but yeah. And I know I'm scrambling trying to get everything wrapped up for the end of the year. And of course, unfortunately, I heard the news of the fact that Book Talk may be going away for US users. So, and kind of knew that was a possibility. It's just very unfortunate. And the question is, where can I continue to be able to maintain the connectivity with people who want to stay connected going forward? So we'll see how that goes going forward. I have a couple ideas of things that I would like to do. And we'll go from there. And I have to switch this off that mode again every time. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep, hi.
Hi, okay, I'm gonna try to switch this off. I just got a new phone and I figured out how to minimize this grid pattern with my old phone to a dual thing, but now I have a new phone and everything kind of looks a little different.
It took me forever to figure it out too.
Well, if you have any suggestions, let me know, because I'm trying to remember what I do. Wait, hold on, guessed. Maybe it's under guessed. Wait. I think so.
Yeah, I think.
Here, let's see. Nope, that's not it.
I'm trying to remember how I did it.
I'll figure it out. I hope. Let's see. No. Well, that didn't do much. I'm gonna give me a moment to try to figure this out. No. I want to just.
It's either under settings or guest, I think.
I'm gonna try to figure this out. Sorry about this, but how are you doing? Thank you for coming and joining this craziness that is all. This is my life.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. I don't know why that's so hard for me to figure out. And again, new phone. I literally got it yesterday evening, so I'm like, oh, everything just looks different, and I don't. But hi. Okay, so this is usually just very casual. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of my authors' chats before, but we just kind of talk about books, writing, everything in between. And if anybody asks a question along the way that's bookish related, we can kind of respond to that as well. But since you are my co-host today, I'll let you introduce yourself and what you write.
So I'm Michelle Wise. I write fantasy. I don't know how to categorize other than fantasy because they're not fantasy romance because there is romance, but it's not core to the story. You take away the romance, the book is still there. So I'm not real sure how to categorize them. I need to figure that out before I publish. But
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is there are definitely that distinction is the story when it comes to romantic elements, is this, the big core of the story still there if you remove the romance, or if you remove the romance, is the story gone? Because that's one of those big distinctions, as you were mentioning, for a romance side of things. And, in regard to even most writing, a lot of stories will have even some minute element of romance because that's kind of the slice of life aspect. So just depending on how much is focused in there. But so go on, tell me more about your fantasy with heavy romantic elements.
Well, I don't even know if it's heavy romantic elements, but so I have been writing 4 books at once because I get distracted. I work on one and I get bored with it. So then I have to move to a different story and work on it for a little while. And so it's taken me forever to write a book because I do that. But I have decided that I'm going to stick with one and work on it until I get it done. And I have a goal of getting it done in February. So this one is a cozy fantasy. I don't know if you've read Legends and Lattes. I got inspired by Legends and Lattes, so it is sort of it's about a witch and she's gonna open a bakery And people are skeptical about coming to her bakery because they're afraid that she's going to hex their food or something. So it's about her trying to get through that, and the romantic interest is a doctor who is very much against magic because he is very much like, okay, wow, my brain went.
He's very science focused.
He's very science focused and doesn't believe in magic.
Yeah. I get that. I definitely get that. And it's kind of very neat how, one person's writing can inspire so many people. For Travis Baldree, the author of Legends and Lattes. Before that, not to say they weren't fantasies that could be qualified as cozy fantasy, but he pretty much essentially almost coined that term and gave it a space. And there are a lot of authors I know that are inspired to write things very similar or in that same newfound genre based off falling in love with his book. And I guess I was fortunate to meet him a couple years ago at one of the big conventions. I live in Georgia, so in a Dragon Con, he came a couple years ago and did a, just signed books. And so I was able to get a signed copy of Legends and Lattes from him.
Awesome.
But that is my full experience with him. But I do know he and his writing has been very inspirational to so many people. So that is cool, and I get it. The whole writing multiple things simultaneously, that is my blessing and that is my curse simultaneously, because I think for me, it's like I get bored. And so I have this very odd rotation of my projects. So I will be focusing on finishing maybe the first draft of one book, let's say in the morning, but then in the afternoon or evening, that's when I will edit a totally different book from a totally different series. And it just keeps me kind of, focused and entertained versus reading and rereading and rereading the same book over and over again, because sometimes you get either too close to your work and you're making mistakes, or, your eyes get blurry because you've been staring at the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I have this thing where I will work on the same thing for months. Like, I don't change in the day. I don't go from one book to another. I will work on book one for months until I get just sick of it. And then I will go to another book and work on it for months until I get sick of it. So I get hyper focused. So I can't change what I'm working on until I'm tired of it.
That's fair. And again, everybody's different on how they approach things. The trick is, if you start getting into too many projects, eventually you should go back so you can finish one, depending on how far along, that whole process, because there's the writing, then there's the whole editing, and then the whole formatting, and then publishing, and then the marketing that comes after.
I guess I kind of build in that thing where, people say after you finish like the first draft, you should let it sit for a while before you go back and edit it. I kind of build that into my work progress, because by the time I get back to that book, I've already forgotten half of what I wrote.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy having the cycle of various projects, because when I go back and do a reread or a next level edit, depending on what book and where their stage is, things are very different. I'm like, oh, I forgot I wrote that. I'm very impressed with myself. It is fun. Or you come back and you're like, oh, I didn't catch that earlier. That needs to change right away. And it does help that way. Plus, if you are a person who writes series, which I am, I know, like, if I'm working and I'm moving along the series, like I may be getting one book, let's say book 3 ready for publication, but I may be drafting book 7 or something of that series. And so if I know what's going to happen 4 books on or 3 books on ahead, sometimes I can go back before publishing and kind of seed in stuff that ties everything in a little more tightly and a little more neater, because I'm a person who I'm not a pantser, I'm not a planner, I'm kind of in the between. So sometimes it's nice to be able to kind of look back and be like, ooh, before I hit publish, let me just tie a few these little sneak peeks in. Little teasers.
I've always wondered how people do that. Like, do you sit there and plan out the entire series so you know how to sit there and put in the little Easter eggs and stuff? Or you just pick something to be like, oh, I'll just tie that back and pretend like I already had it planned that way?
For me, I realize realized that every series is a little different, and my way of approaching writing is constantly evolving in some matter or fashion. But for my earlier series, I kind of had a good idea of how many books were going to be in it, their main themes and plot points and main characters and stuff like that. So I had a rough idea of some of that, the core progression. Going forward, I'm working on a couple potentially long-term projects that I'm just loosely world building, but I'm approaching it very differently, where I'm like, I'm not exactly sure how many or exactly sure where I want the story to end. I just know a lot of other aspects about it, which is very different. So who knows what's better? I may not like the way I'm approaching the newer works and go back to my old way, but you just have to figure out what works best for you. So this cozy fantasy, you said you were going to try to focus on it and try to finish off, I guess, the first draft towards the beginning of next year. Mm-hmm. And is this going to be, do you have an idea if this is going to be a standalone, or are you going to try to...
It's a series. Okay. Because it's like a coven of witches, so each one of them is going to get their own book.
Oh, that's neat. I love little tie-ins to try to figure out when you're focusing on a series, are you following the same character throughout, or are you kind of like what you're saying is kind of doing the one-off branch of everybody's interrelated, but it's not the same. The main character from book one may not be the main character for book two.
Right.
So which story, because you said four in your back burner. So what was it that made you decide, I love this question, what was it that made you decide you want to be a writer, that you wanted to try to tackle and produce a book one day?
It's a great question. So most of my life, I always thought that being a writer was one of those unattainable goals, like being a celebrity or the president, you know? Like, there's not very many people that are going to achieve that. But so I didn't even think about doing that for most of my life. And I was about 29 when my ex-boyfriend's mom gave me a book, or a series of books she loaned to me. They were actually werewolf romance books. And I devoured them. I normally wasn't a reader. Mm-hmm. I read what I had to read in high school. But so I devoured those, and then I just started getting more and more books, and it was a daily thing after that. I was just always reading. And then, when you're reading books and like a character does something really stupid, and you're like, why the heck did they do that?
Yep. And
then my brain started going, well, if they had done this instead, then this would have happened. Mm-hmm. And then I started doing it with TV shows. That was really dumb. This would have been so much better if this would have happened. And then, I don't know, this story popped into my brain.
Yeah, that's great. Which of your stories was your first one?
So it doesn't even have a title, because I can't think of one. I'm thinking I'm just going to call it the main character's name, which is Kadra. But so it's about a witch who was born with the ability to hold more magic in her body than other witches have. Ooh. And the prologue is what actually came into my head first, which is her being born. Mm-hmm. And her mother dies in childbirth. Because magic is it's like blood. It's something that is through their body, and it's essential to their body. And like, if you lose blood, your body will eventually create more. But if you lose too much, you die. It's also that way with magic. And the baby was taking too much of the magic away from the mother, and her mom dies in childbirth. And that was, I don't know, what came into my head first.
I do like that, and the fact that there's one of my series, the Jet Chronicles. It's my young adult portal fantasy. It falls into a lot of categories: clean fantasy, isekai, etc., so on. There's so many ways you can categorize books. You don't have to stick with just one, just so you know that. But going on and on and on. But in that world, that multiverse I created was the fact that, a little bit like what you're saying, is there are certain entities, witches included, where they have to be on a realm, a world, a dimension where magic exists, because it's part of, what they need to live. It's kind of, air, but magic has to be present too in order for them to continue existing. But the main character, she's from Earth, a non-magical world, so she's not limited by that way. And it is a very different distinction where magical entities can only exist in certain realms, in certain worlds, because they are limited to where magic exists. But it is always fun to see when people play with that concept of how characters can utilize or tap in some kind of magical element or essence, depending on how you view it.
That's so actually the word that I use is essence.
There you go. There's lots of ways to kind of go and word it and express it. But what made you kind of focus? Because now you told me two of your stories focus with the idea of witches or witchcraft, and one being definitely a series with a coven. What made you fall in love with that kind of aspect of fantasy? Because there are so many facets of what makes something fantasy or fantastical. So what made you kind of drawn to the idea of witches and that kind of magic?
I have no idea. It was something that was fun to plot out, like how the magic works in the different plays. And not all the books that I write are about witches. It's just those two. But it's fun to think about how it works, how they use it. If they have to use ingredients, or if it's something that actually comes out of their body, or yeah.
Oh yeah, it is kind of fun to like bracket and decide. Are you going to discern a difference between potions and, again, spell casting and all these kind of things, or are they more or less the same in some way, shape, or form? So it's just intriguing to me, because I do have, like, my young adult series. One of the realities is a witch, wizard, and warlock, magus and styled reality is one of the worlds that my main character interacts with a lot. And so coming up with how they utilize their magic versus a world of dragons and dragon-like entities, which is very, very different. And still magic, but very different. So that is always kind of cool. So how long ago did you start working on your first idea? You said
when I was 29, and I'm 36 now, so it's been a while.
It's okay. I feel like I totally get that. I've always kind of told stories and made up characters. So for me, it's as far as I can, long ago as I can recall. That's how I started doing this whole in the back burner of coming up with ideas, characters, etc., so on. But it took me a long time before I sat down to try to write a book, and then it took me a long time to write the book, and a long time to figure out the editing and publishing. But once you figure that out, it gets quicker.
Yeah. Well, once I figured out how not to write a book, then it got quicker.
That's true too. There are a lot of ways you can there's no one right way to write a book. So, but there are definitely probably things that you should avoid.
And I figured it out. Yeah. Because I'm a perfectionist. I'll write a chapter and then go back and fix that chapter before I move on to the next one. And by the time I do that, then I've already forgot what the next chapter was supposed to be. And it has taken me forever. And I'm not doing that anymore. I am going through it. I'm writing word vomiting until I get to the end, and then I'll go back and fix it.
Hey, fair enough. I like, no, and that's good, because there are so many people that get stuck on, again, trying to make that first draft the final draft. And that's not the case. There is a whole editing process. And if you try to be too perfect with your initial draft, it can bog you down and take you forever.
Yeah, because I was in a critique group, and what we would do is, like, every week we would each turn in a chapter of our book, and everybody else would read it and give thoughts. So I was writing the chapter, and then fixing it, trying to make it perfect before turning it into the group because I didn't want to turn in crap. So, but that was my problem, that I was doing that.
Yeah, and it's something I think a lot of newer or younger newbie authors have to learn is to what extent, you take the time and energy and effort for, again, first draft, versus there are definitely people who will just, put down whatever comes to their mind and do huge overhauls in between draft one and draft whatever the final one is right before, it's published, because behind the scenes, they're doing so much and dramatically changing it. I know just the way I've written up to this point, I am very close. My first draft is very close to the final version of what says. It's like little tweaks here and there, but I am also a very slow writer in comparison to some other people. So, and I know why, because I also like to make sure what I put on the page is pretty good, but I've had to come to terms where it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. This is why I have editors and beta readers. This is why I have all those things. And that is okay.
How long does it take you to write a first draft?
Trick question. Because I'm always working on multiple projects. So you have to understand, when it comes to that, there's the length of book. Length of book and the amount of time per day that someone is able to, because I am fortunate at this point that I'm a full-time author and artist, so I can dedicate a lot of time in the day to do all things bookish. Not everybody has that capability, so it's hard to compare, but and I'm also changing going forward the size of books that I'm working on, because my original books, are like 130,000 words. One was 170,000, but I had to trim down that a lot. It's my first book. A little too wordy. Had to trim that one down a little bit. Going forward, there are series that, depending, because of the subgenres that I'm kind of working into, I kind of want to do 100,000 words, so a respectively shorter style book. But first draft, it could take me anything from 6 weeks to 3 months for a first draft, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's pretty fast.
But it's taken time. You have to understand. I have written a number of works, and it wasn't always that case. My first book was 10 years. 4 of those were college, so that was a hiatus. But 10 years. So respectively, yes, I'm moving along faster. So, but it takes time. And sorry if you hear notifications beep. Again, just got this phone and haven't muted notifications. Now I have to make a memo to myself. Let me do that right now to do that.
No problem.
But yes.
Hi, Roomball dude.
But yes. Okay. Now I lost my train of thought as I was making notes to myself, because always trying to do better. So I don't know where you live in the whole wide world, but one question I want to ask, because it's on my mind, because I'm in the States, and obviously the news is out that a book talk may be going by for us here, unfortunately. Are you active on any other platforms for people to follow you outside of Book Talk, or is this your main hub right now?
So it is my main. I have Facebook and Instagram, and I've been hearing people talking about Blue Sky. I don't even know what it is. I haven't looked at it. I don't know, but I might look into that. It won't actually affect me because I am not in America. I'm from Kentucky.
Okay.
But I live in Europe now, so.
Okay, I was counting the time, because I remember we were scheduling this, and I thought you were I didn't know if you were touring through or if you were living there, so I was like, yeah. But yeah, I knew you were.
My husband's grandparents are from Portugal.
Oh, wow.
And they have Alzheimer's, so we moved here to take care of them. Wow.
Well, that's a noble thing to do, and a big leap for anybody who's, from... Going across the pond it's dedication, even if you're visiting, and
especially to a country where they don't speak English as the first language. I can't go anywhere without my husband because he has to translate for me, and he can only speak Portuguese about halfway.
I wonder there's a good translation app that helps? I don't know. I've not been in a place that long to kind of need it, but just curious.
Yeah, so the problem is, even though Portuguese is from Portugal, they speak it in Brazil, and so Brazilian Portuguese, because Brazil is a much bigger country, they have way more speakers. So everywhere that you go to get like stuff like that, or even like learning about it, it's all Brazilian Portuguese, which is different than European Portuguese.
Do you think being now living in Europe, is that influencing some of the things when you're doing your writing? Like, have you been inspired by anything now that you've moved that you would not have been inspired if you had stayed in the States?
So I have this idea that I haven't really put in the book yet, but I'm gonna, about like the landscape, because it's really, really cool here, where they have like hills and they have like a village going down the hill, and all of the buildings have red roofs, and it's just so pretty to see all of these red roofed buildings going down the hill. It's really cool.
I like that. Yeah. I definitely like that, because I've done the opposite, where I've been inspired through, just research or seeing a movie or something, of another location. And for instance, going back to my adult series, since I have Wizards and Witches on the brain because talking with you, but that world was very inspired topography by Tuscany. And I just love the visual of like the Tuscan landscape. And so that's how I kind of viewed that particular world area where my character kind of interacts with the most. And this past summer, I was finally able to kind of see Tuscany, be there, and I was like, this is my dream. Look how this is beautiful. But it is really cool, because when you go somewhere so different, and it does stir the creativity and kind of inspire. So I was just curious if you were inspired by anything during that transition of your move from one location to another.
Yeah, mostly that. I don't know if I'll incorporate the way, I doubt I'll incorporate the way the houses are built. The houses are concrete here. They don't build houses out of wood. And like, I don't know if you can hear the echo, but that's because I'm in the basement, which is really big, but because the walls are concrete, the house is, it's really cold in the winter here.
I can imagine.
Because the concrete house holds either cold or holds the heat.
Interesting. Never would have thought about that, but I've also not lived in a concrete house. So that's a good little fun factoid I'll have to tuck away in the off chance I ever need to use it. You never know. It's so odd to figure out what fun little facts you're able to finally pull from down the line. You're like, ooh, wait, I'm going to put that in a book. Ha ha! So when it comes to your writing, is there anything fun that you have just, you were researching and kind of stumbled upon outside of what we just talked about, being like, oh, that's really neat? For example, I love Ancient Warfare, and there was a show, I think it was like the Top 10, and it was all referring to Top 10, and one of the episodes was Ancient Warfare from China. And I was so fascinated about all their flame-throwing weaponry that, since just simultaneously I was writing about a Chinese mythology-inspired world, that I was like, I'm going to use some of this like technology in this book, and everybody's going to think I made this stuff up because it's so out there that it sounds unreal, but it's real. It's so neat. So that was really fun.
That is a good question.
It's okay.
I think most of the stuff I already kind of knew. Like, I do research stuff, but it's most like nothing that I was like, oh, that's cool.
Hey,
yes.
That's okay.
Anyway, that I can think of.
Hey, that's okay. Now, if you're going to be focusing on a bakery, you'll have to go in. Wait, okay, here. I have one for you. So, sorry about the notifications. I will figure out how to mute this for next time. If there is a next time, cries, TikTok, tears. Okay, so for the point when you release your book, this is down the line. If you were ever thinking about fun little things to do to send out, if you ever decide to sign copies and things, maybe you could come up with cute little recipe cards of some of the baked goods that your bakery has that you could put in like in with your book. That would be so cute.
I've actually I'm thinking about doing a like a grimoire for each of the witches, so like all their spells, their recipes and stuff. And I'm not sure if I'll do it as an like actual separate book than the book, or like put it in the back of the book so there's only one that you have to buy. So that was
you could do it like a whole variety of ways. You could even have like a special release and of your book where, depending on if you're traditionally publishing, indie publishing, if you decide to have your own direct shop, however you decide to work it, you could always have like a special edition where it's like you could buy the basic paperback, but then $5 more you could get the one with the additional grimoire in the back or something like that.
Great idea.
Yeah. Hustle. Hustle as an author. I want all my readers to want it all, but hustle as an author. Fun facts, fun ideas. I love random ideas. I love offering them, and because I don't have enough time to even attempt a fraction of them myself. So if you have that time, please go ahead and do some of the fun things that I wish I had time to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'm probably gonna do it that way now.
See, it's like when you come in with the author mind of like, how can you make things freshen something up? Like if you have a book and you released it and it's been out a year or so, and it's maybe a lull, and maybe the second book doesn't release for another year or 2 years or whatever, you could always have that special bonus release in between, just to stir up interest and keep people, because it's hard to keep readers interested in between publication. That's one of the hardest things. Is there are so many authors out there producing works, and readers are like, ooh, that's shiny, I want that, which I love. But it's like, can you remember to come back to me, please? And some will, for sure, but others will kind of continue to see what's next and new, and it's like, come back, I have something else to offer you.
You should just read the entire series and then release them a month apart.
Some authors do that. Some authors genuinely do that. And I wish I was that patient. I am definitely not. I am so impatient that I am horrible when it comes to releasing my book. Half the time, especially with my novella series, I was just like, guess what, guys? It releases in a week. Because when it's ready, I want to share it right away. I want to hear the feedback, have the people enjoy it. And it's so hard to like stall and be like, okay, build up interest, build up excitement. I'm excited. Can we just share?
See, I'm one of those readers that if you tell me about a book and I get excited about it, but it doesn't release for like a couple of months, I'm like, pfft, and I move on, because I'm not going to remember to wait for a couple of months. So you tell me that a book is releasing tomorrow, I'll remember that. I might buy it tomorrow. So, but I guess some people do. Some people like the build up and like to know months before a book releases. I wouldn't.
I think it's reader by reader, and there is that instant satisfaction and gratification of you see a book, you buy the book. You see the book, you buy the book, and that's great. And it does change things when you have a book already released, and you can say, hey, you are interested in it? It's available right now. And the same thing when you're a series writer and you finally finish the whole series. There are people who will wait until the series is completed because they will not touch a series until every book is out. And that does change things. But it's so much time.
I got into a series. I was really into this series. And I got like 15 books into the series and then found out that it wasn't completed.
Oh, no.
And I was mad. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm still getting them trickled in, and I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I'm going to read them now because I'm already 15 books into it, and I'm invested. But I wish I had known that it wasn't completed, and I wouldn't have read it.
See, okay, you're the proof that those instant gratification people, you are one of those. See it, buy it. Better be ready. I gotcha. And so that's one of the nice things is I was finally, last month, released the final novella of one of my series. So now I have 2 complete series to market, and, I can cater it that way. But, you look at all the years that it took to get to that point, and it's, as an author, it's like, it's so much time. I want you to appreciate it. I want you to read it. I want you to get excited about it. But to wait all that time just to have it complete, my author brain is like, don't do that. Enjoy it as it comes. The reading brain, I get it. I do. I'm also a very slow reader when it comes to things that aren't my work. So I probably, even if I picked up a series that was halfway through, it's going to be completed well in advance of me finishing it, because I'm very slow when it comes to reading, and I also cycle between series. So by the time I do this weird dual, triple, whatever spiral, it'll be a while.
And I know that I say, oh, wait until it's done and then release them all in like month after month. But if you write 10 books in a series and it takes you a year to write it, that's 10 years. And you're not going to wait that long to publish something that you worked on.
Yes. And that's the thing is, there's a lot that goes into it. And obviously, depending on your genre, and like epic fantasies are definitely bigger, and lit RPGs are bigger, but then romantasy is not necessarily big. YA is, a lot shorter traditionally. My YA is not. My YA is chunky. But traditionally it's, shorter. And so if you are working in a genre that doesn't need as many words as maybe another kind of genre, you may be able to turn out and write a trilogy relatively quickly. But that is not who I am. That is not who I am. And oh well. But let me also ask, kind of going back a little earlier, because I was asking you where else were you outside of Book Talk for people to follow you, especially the US people, because if this app's been fairly nice recently, but has had a couple glitches, typically I'll repurpose this video on my YouTube channel so people can come back and reference and hopefully again continue to discover you going forward. So that's why I asked about like, where outside of Book Talk are you?
Yeah, I'm also on YouTube.
There you go. Are you also, do you have a newsletter or a website or other places like those that people can, okay. What's your
No, I have not done a newsletter because one, I don't really understand them. I don't subscribe to people's newsletters. I wouldn't know what to put in a newsletter. I hate newsletters. I'm not going to read another author's newsletter. I'm just not. So I don't know what to do with that. I've heard that it's really good to do because people actually do use them. I don't understand why. But
one of the big things, especially with this, what's not probably guaranteed now to happen with the Book Talk in the US market. But when it comes to newsletters, that's something an author can own. So no matter if other socials come and go, that's something where you as an author have a direct communication to your readership. But yeah, it's hard for. It's not like a social platform where you got a lot of give and take. I am revamping my newsletter for next year, which I'm really excited about because some new upgrades are allowing me to do a little more engagement stuff. So one of the ideas that I was someone else told me to, and I was like, "Can I use this?" And they were like, "Yes." Is I'm going to have my readership co-create a story together, where I'm going to start and saying once upon a time, blah, blah, so-and-so, and, start it off. And then I give them an A and B choice and everybody's going to vote. And so the next month or whenever I put out the next newsletter, I usually do monthly, I'll continue the story using whichever choice they chose, whichever one was the winner. So then I'll continue it on and then give them another A, B choice or A, B, C, D. And we'll see. And then we'll be creating a story together. So that's a way to create engagement. Through a newsletter, but as all things, you only have so much time a day. What are you going to focus your energy on? So I get it.
Yeah, I'm working on making a website. I've purchased the domain and all of that, and I was trying to design it, but it's just harder than I thought it was. So I'm gonna pay somebody to design it for me, but that's expensive. So I'm saving up some money.
If you're, someone who doesn't know what to do, and that does take a lot of time and everything to establish it, depending on your host, like I go through Wix, and, if I had chosen someone to help design and actually had someone kind of help teach me the ways of Wix the first time going through, because what I liked was having someone help me get started. But once I learned then how to adjust things, I didn't have to use them going forward, and I can do all the updates and adjustments myself now that the whole space was kind of set up for me to do so. Because, it's expensive to pay someone say, hey, can you change this today? Hey, can you adjust that?
I'm pretty sure that I could make changes and adjustments if I needed to. It's just setting it up to begin with to look the way that I want it to look. It's like, I've tried.
And there's definitely more capabilities now than when I set up. I did a revamp of mine not a few years ago, just to kind of keep it a little more current and a little more fresh looking. But I have not used in some of the little more in-depth technology that's out there because, surprisingly, I'm not that tech savvy. I'm on these things because I have to be as an author, not because I inherently am good at it.
Yeah.
I'm here to do my best.
Yeah, if writing a book does not make you good at using the computer, like I know how to type it.
Nope. And that's the thing I think a lot of people are so unaware of and get that shock when they realize an author, modern day author, especially if you're on the indie side of things, which I am, we do a lot more than just writing. I wish it was, in one hand, I wish it was writing with the fun part of meeting and hanging out with readers. Sorry, I have my voice really scratchy there. Sorry. But if I could do that, that's great. Yet, in order to be, you have to do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, you have to be marketer, publisher, celebrity.
Something. But yeah, so I get it. I definitely get it. And so when it comes to your writing, how much do you draft out? Are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? What do you identify as when it comes to creating your stories? And I know you hyperfixate until you can't look at those characters anymore and then rotate, but how do you approach writing so far?
So that has changed since I figured out how not to write a book. And so I was a pantser completely, totally, 100%. I got the idea for the prologue, and then from there on, it was complete pantsing in the first book. And I got to chapter 15 and didn't know where to go from there.
Oh.
And I did that with my other books too. So now this one that I'm actually writing and trying to finish now, I have plotted, sort of. My plot is a page of this happens, and then this happens, and then they go through this, and then this happens.
Yep.
And it's just a little bit of like, it's not an actual plot like chapter 1, and then chapter 2. No, it's just a paragraph. And that is my plot. I have gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, now I need to sit here and think about what happens between here and here. And I'm a little stuck on it at the moment, but
okay, it does happen. It does happen. I was working on a book earlier on this year for one of my continuing series, and it's a book 6 of a series, and at this point there's so much that's going on that it's gotten really complex. So I used to do the more simplified method, kind of, it's like a little bit like yours, a little bit, but it had some other differences, but something that was far more simple because I would fill in, these gaps as I kind of came to them. But I've gotten to the point where the complexity of this particular story requires me to approach it very differently. So I actually kind of was like, uh-oh, I need to rethink how I'm doing this. And I paused that one, wrote a totally different book in between because I was like, I need to get away from that for a moment, take a breath. And so I'm actually right now getting back into it and trying to figure out how to plot a little better all these stories, because for this one, it needs to be a little more tight in my plotting versus loose and flowing, what I'm used to.
You would think that I would be better at plotting because I actually published a fantasy novel planning book, and that, where you fill it out and stuff. I made it for myself, and then I just published it in case other people want to use it. But I found out that it's not really conducive to cozy fantasies
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
they're not so much about the conflict, which I mean, there is conflict, it's just not centered around it.
Yeah.
And so some of the plot points, I'm like, I don't think this pertains to this type of book.
Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to use it. I'm trying to be like, okay, even though it says, something about conflict, maybe I can change that in some way. I'm trying to use my actual plotting book for it, but it's not working out too well.
And each book, each series, each genre, there are so many variables that will affect how you approach tackling them. And, you have to be, strong about certain things, saying, okay, I do know I need to do these checklist items, but also be flexible because what worked maybe for one book may not work for another one of a totally different series or within the same series, just later 6 books in. So I get that. Definitely. So it is interesting, and it's always that it's a fun challenge and it's an annoying challenge. It's a frustrating challenge, but it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So I definitely I do know how that is. Now, do you know, because you're still in the writing stage, have you thought about have you looked far enough in advance of when you get to the point of publication where you want to publish a book? Because some people focus exclusively through Amazon, others go wide, some kind of, some sell direct, some do a little bit of all the above. I just don't know if you have even got that part because you're still early enough where you're like, I'll get that later.
I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to stick with Amazon. I would love to do the whole thing that everybody does on TikTok where they're signing their books and people can buy it through your TikTok shop and stuff, but being in Europe might make shipping to people, because most people are in the US that buy off of here, it would make shipping to people really expensive.
Well, maybe not in the TikTok shop too much longer.
I know. But I have looked into like draft to digital and all of those, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to have to deal with them. I think I just want to put it on Amazon, hit publish, and be done.
And for the most part, if you go that route, you can always change it up later. That's kind of, I started originally exclusive through Amazon for all formats and everything, and it's because when you're learning, so there are definitely people who are ready and willing and confident enough to go wide from the get-go. And then there are others who are like, let me do this route, see if I'm comfortable, and if I'm happy here, great. If I want to expand or change things, I can do that at a later date. And again, I will repeat this 1,000 times. There is no one right way to publish. So do whatever you feels right by you then, and if you want to change things up later.
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
I've also heard the draft to digital's customer service is awful and all this stuff, and I mean Amazon's customer service isn't 100% all the time either, but
I was like, I've not heard anything bad about draft to digital customer service. I know Ingram Sparks has had a lot of chatter of not liking it, but I've only just started working with draft to digital, so I've not needed to deal with their customer service. So personally, I can't say yay or nay. But
maybe it was Ingram Spark. I don't know. It was one of them where somebody had a typo and they wanted to change it and they couldn't.
Yeah. That I know. There's I see perks about every platform, and everybody's offer has something special about it. But yeah, I'm using currently draft to digital. I'm working my way through to try to put all my ebooks through them. And then going forward next year, I'm going to figure out how I want to expand my print books and see about that. But that is a next year problem. When I say that, that's like 3 weeks from now problem.
Can you hear the wind?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Now
the windows are closed. It's just really loud.
Now that you pointed that out, that's that perfect sound effect wind.
It is.
I love it. But no, it is exciting. And it's exciting to be so early on in the process because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of stumbling blocks. There's a lot of great things. And there's a lot of places right now that are there to help people like that are beginning. So it's a great place to be and it's fun. And I hope, you're enjoying the writing process for all 4 of your works.
It is fun to stare at a computer screen and vividly hallucinate.
Yeah. or as I do at my house, I will sometimes even talk aloud, kind of work through scenes. So I do talk to myself. And I do have great conversations. And I get paid for it. So I figured out how to do this. No, it is fun. I love being an author and I can talk about it all day. And I am one of those people I'm a workaholic and I do obsess over my stuff. But I enjoy what I do. And I hope everybody who is a writer, you enjoy what you're doing. Enjoying your characters.
It's a weird thing to get into if you don't enjoy it. Because it's difficult and often thankless and often not very much money. So if you don't enjoy it, what the heck are you doing?
Exactly. So let me actually ask you, because I haven't asked this question in a long time. Where do you get your characters' names? If, you work on your various projects, how do you decide this character is going to be named so-and-so?
Mostly fantasy name generator.
Ooh, I like that.
And I will typically either you have to hit refresh until it's like 5 names or whatever, and just do that until you find one that you like. It's usually just, I like the way that sounds. I'm not really sure why I like the way that sounds, but I do. And I'll either change the spelling of it or take 2 of them and smush them together.
Ooh, fun. I've not used that, and but I think you're now the second person to mention that does exist. But it is always fun to figure out how people name their characters. One of my favorite responses was they looked at whatever the year they started writing, the top 100 male names and the top 100 female names, and they started just going down the list A, B, C, D.
That works if you're writing a book set on
urban
Earth.
Fantasy or something. Yeah, yes.
So fantasy books are a little different. Unless you want to use normal names in your fantasy book, which you can do. I just don't.
If you're second world fantasy, it does sound a little weird. So I'm with you. I kind of pull from various things, either mythology or I've made some up in the past. But for most part, recently, a lot of them have some kind of reason why I named them the way that they named them, and that may change again in the future. But yeah, it's always kind of fun, second world fantasy or fiction, to take you far, far away. And so you want the names to sound like they're not from here.
I also really try very hard to make sure that they are pronounceable.
I do not.
I'm like, I do not want people complaining that they cannot pronounce the names in the book. I don't want people to get confused and just say the first letter and then the rest of it's jumbled. This person's name is.
No, I totally get that. I actually have glossaries and phonetic pronunciation guides in a lot of the back of my books because of that reason, because I choose to do unusual names, but there is going to be someone who wants to know how it's supposed to sound, so I do have that as an option. And then if you're that person who's like, I'm going to read it how we're going to read it, you're reading it. That's really what matters. But then when the movie comes out and you see you're incorrect, what we wouldn't do. No, I don't know. I think I would love a long series for one of my books. I would totally be excited about that.
Mm-hmm. That would be amazing, just to see your book turned into a series or a movie or something.
Yeah, because effects nowadays are like, ooh, that would be really cool.
And honestly, all the movies that they've been coming out with here lately are just remakes of other movies and stuff. Come up with a new show that nobody's seen before, pick some books and make them into movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you really are struggling with ideas, guess what? There are authors out there. You just need to be a screenwriter who's like, ooh, I like this book. And pitch it and see if the author's like, yes, I would like you to turn this into a screenplay so we can try to make this something even more special.
So we can stop having movies that are just remakes of old movies.
Again, it's Groundhog's Day every day. But since the hour is almost over, I do want to try to ask you, this is one of the questions that I always try to make sure I ask, and that is there any topic you wanted to cover that you didn't cover, or any questions that you wanted to ask that you haven't had a chance to ask yet, or any announcements? This is your time.
I mean, I can talk about my book for a second if you want.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a book, but it's a workbook for authors that helps you plan your book. So it's got like character profile. It asks you questions and you can fill it out. I made this for myself when I started realizing that pantsing's not a good idea.
Hey, some people can do it and do it well, but each person's different, and I'm not a true pantser either, so.
So I came up with all kinds of questions about world building. What's the name of the country? What's the name of the world? What's the flora and fauna look like if it's different than Earth? And all kinds of questions that it asks. And it took me a long time to research all of this. What you should ask about this type of stuff. There's about the magic. Who can use it? What's the downside? All that. And I came up with a plotting system that works for me. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to use it. But it was sort of like Save the Cat, but I simplified it because to me, Save the Cat was just some of the plotting points are too similar.
I have not read it. It is on my desk of to reads whenever I have time. But yes,
I read it, and it's good. It's great. To me, some of the plot points just seem too similar. It's like it asks you, this plot point is this, and this plot point is that, and like that's the same thing.
And again, depending on your genre, like you were talking about, cozy fantasy, to be as in depth as you may need for a high fantasy style book, you may not need to do all that for a cozy fantasy. You have to.
So this is less steps. It's like 5 less steps. But if anybody needs help with their books, you could check it out.
I love that.
It's on
Where
Amazon.
is that available?
I'm sorry?
Where is that available?
Amazon.
Okay, see.
Just under my name. You just search my name.
Perfect. And like I said, I will attempt to try to find links and stuff when I'm able to put this on YouTube down below so people can
send it to you.
With that too. That makes it easy. Yeah. I love it. But yeah, no, that's cool. That's a sizable book too for a workbook. It's not like 6 pages. You're talking about this is a decent sized workbook.
Oh yeah, no. And I have like for the character profiles, I think there's 10 because I'm like, I don't know how many characters you have in your book. So I put in as many, like the first pretty good chunk of it is just for character profiles.
Which is good to have because you could be surprised how many side characters end up becoming important enough that you really need them to be quite dimensional in order for your book to be believable. And I'm a person that the way I've written so far, it is going to be changing depending on book and series. But so far, my first 3 series, I followed one POV, but with huge casts of side characters that are, a number of them are always almost, other kind of main characters essentially, even though they don't have a POV, just because they're that important. But do you have you decided, or are you writing from one point of view, or are you going back and forth with different characters in your let's look at your cozy fantasy, because that's the one I'm focusing on right now.
That one I had thought I was just gonna do just the main character's point of view, but I've thinking I'm gonna do a point of view of the love interest also. I actually haven't decided on that one. I have one of my books where I actually go back and forth between, because that one is about a detective and his partner who's a ghost, and he's the only person that can see her. But I go back and forth between their POVs fairly often. So like in the cozy one, I think I'm gonna do every once in a while do it in his point of view, not like
yeah, stir things up.
or anything. But.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like there you can make it 90% of one, but then change some up just to again draw interest or show someone's again a different perspective or show what's going on in another area of the city, the world, the reality, whatever. And that is always just gives you that much more interest and texture for your story. Texture for your story. Texture for your story.
Sounds good to me.
Sure. I don't know if it sounds. I'm like trying to work. Did that sound the way I think it sounded? I don't know. But editing. This is why I have editors. I wish I had an editor speak to edit. Anyhow, but since I'm about the end of the hour and I do have both my dogs created at the moment, which means it's about time to let them out and go to the restroom. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this past hour and talking about your upcoming works and your workbook and getting to know you a little bit more. And if you ever want to do another one of these, I do plan on in advance. I will probably have to be switching platforms, but I will figure something out. But if you ever want to do something else akin to this, let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and it would be really kind of cool to talk about, at the stage that you're publishing or, that would be kind of fun to see where you are at that point.
We can do another one once I publish it.
Yes. Okay, great. And for everybody who's been chiming in and out, thank you for listening. And I will say goodbye for today. And until next time, everyone. Bye. Thanks for talking.
Bye.